All right. Thanks so much for joining us for the State of Texas EdTech webinar. My name is Jake Russell, and I will be hosting. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate everyone's time. And we'll go ahead and get started now that it's 12:15 and let people join in over the next couple of minutes. First, want to give a quick thank you to our sponsor, Neverware. Their cloud-ready OS is used in more than 2,000 schools around the world to turn PCs and Macs into manageable Chromebooks. So if you stick around to the end of the webinar, they are actually hosting a giveaway to anybody who stays through the whole thing. So if you want to stick around for that, you can get some free stuff at the end of the event. A couple of housekeeping things. We will be launching polls. We just closed the first one, so keep an eye on that. We'll also have a short Q&A time at the end of the presentation. So if you want to start dropping any questions that you have, or as you hear the discussion, drop a question in the comments section, and we'll let our presenters know about that as we go along. To go ahead and get started, we've got Dr. Bruce Ellis, the Senior Director of Professional Development with TCEA. Bruce will be presenting first, and then we'll hear from our team at Barbers Hill ISD. But again, thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and we will go ahead and get started. Bruce, I'll go ahead and hand the reins over to you here.
All right, are you able to see my screen, Drew, and hear me okay?
Everything's good on our end.
All right, well, as we talk about the state of EdTech in Texas, maybe a better question or title might be, what is the state of your tech? And so I'll be taking you through some things to kind of give you some things to think about. And then Sebastian will be talking about what they're doing in Barbers Hill. And so you can make some applications from that as well. So first, I'm going to real quickly talk about who's in charge of the future. Sometimes we would like to think it's us, but that may not be true. What's coming down the pike as regards to technology? Maybe it's already in your district, maybe not. And then for sure, regardless, how can we prepare so that our students are where they need to be when they graduate? You probably find yourself on one of these, hopefully you find yourself on one of these categories here, either a baby boomer, a Generation X, or possibly a millennial. And we know that there are some characteristics that fall into each of those. Baby boomers, they're the loyal ones. They work well with others, and they do the work because it needs to be done. Generation X, very high job expectancy. They like that life balance and freedom. They're rather independent. And then millennials, which we've heard a lot about in the last few years. Avid consumers, they're fun, they're self-confident, and they want it now. And when that comes to our education in our classroom, and even the use of technology, we kind of find that we have to juggle some new things. So when we think about that, we think, uh-oh, who exactly is in charge? Is it the millennials, the baby boomers, the Generation X? Well, come to find out, I've got bad news for us. It's actually the Generation Z that we need to be preparing for. And because those are our customers, they are the ones that need to be, so to speak, in charge of how we design education and how we use technology, how we think about our purchases, our refresh cycles, our networking, our deployments, and all of those issues that come into play. They were connected from birth, starting at about 1990s to 2010. A variety of statistics that are out there on these, I'll say kids. They are very highly educated, will be very highly educated, very mobile, but there are also going to be some downsides, and as we see with the health, obesity is going to be a major problem once they get to all adult age. A couple of things specifically about them. They are very visual, where we're typically verbal if you're a baby boomer. We might like to sit and listen or do a little bit of activities. They really like to try it and see it, get their hands on. So you can see a couple of different stats or different criteria about them. Education for the Generation Z is going to be very different, which means we need to think very differently about what we're doing with technology. What technologies are we purchasing? How does that impact training our teachers? How does that impact designing our curriculum? What exactly are we doing to incorporate this data into our mindset as we prepare our students. They are brighter than any other generation, and so that's going to give us a run for our money. It's no surprise that 25% of them are connected within 5 minutes of waking up, and most of them are connected within an hour or less. If this happens to be one of your kids or grandkids, then you probably were already aware of this, and that's no surprise. It's probably also no surprise that email is not their thing. We may think that's an easy way to communicate, and yet they would say that's very archaic. They are flexible, which is a great thing, but that means they expect us to be flexible with the use of technology, with our deployments, what they can do with the technology. They are multitaskers. So trying to get them to sit and listen and do one thing at a time is going to be very frustrating. So we need to also be thinking about how can we design our classrooms that can accommodate multitaskers. A few more stats just real quickly, because these are going to be our major consumers and customers in our classrooms. 51% of them, more than half, say they learn best by doing and not by listening. We just know that's a good pedagogy, a good teaching strategy. But when it becomes where all the class is like that, or a majority of the class is like that, we really have to start thinking about, all right, if they're wanting to be doing and not listening, or not observing, or not participating, watching a group do it, what does that mean for our technology purchases, our technology rollouts, our refreshment cycles? 80% regularly study with friends and often use Skype to do so. So what is that? What implication does that have as far as our bandwidth issues within the classroom? Outside the classroom, are students going to be expected to still use those same skills? What are they going to be doing with other students, not just in their classroom and not just within other classrooms in the building, but as they want to connect with other students across the nation or around the world? How are we going to facilitate that so they best learn? Several of them, about 13%, already have their own business. Sometimes you might see a newscast identifying or highlighting a student that is already making a decent amount of money at a very young age. And surprisingly, they are more financially driven than millennials. It should be no surprise, because we've heard this probably for a while now, that the work that we're preparing them for does not exist today. If we want a statistic to go with that, then we have 65% of the current grade school Gen Z students will work in jobs that that don't exist. So as we think about what we're doing in schools and we feel pretty confident, we feel pretty good, we might say, hey, you know what? There's a light at the end of the tunnel. The only problem is that light may be an oncoming train. And so we may need to really take a look and consider, all right, the technology that we're putting out, is it really meeting the needs of these Gen Z students? And is it going to prepare them not just for our future, but prepare them for their future? And exactly what is their future? So in regards to technology, you probably have some closets that still have some of this in it. I know when I was a tech director, we occasionally would come across a drama stage that would have some of these archived pieces, museum pieces, behind curtains, just because they weren't ever sent to a warehouse. But when we see a picture like this, we may think, oh yeah, this is my district. We're doing good. We're doing well. Only to find out that many of these devices are now outdated. Many of these devices will not run technologies that are currently being deployed in classrooms, or that are ramping up to be deployed by businesses as they direct their target to the classroom. You may have already heard that a variety of companies are working on bendable glass, and we should expect to see that this year. A lot will be promoted right before Christmas as more toys and more tools come out. And of course, in the spring, as we see the Consumer Electronics Show, we'll be seeing a lot more new technologies that will soon be implemented in our classroom. Our students love to be connected. And so you'll notice many of the devices are now making that very possible. Regardless of where they are, what they want, they will have a device that will help them connect. And if it's not a device like this, then it may be a device that is kid-friendly. You may not have one of these at your house, but it's very possible that a Gen Z will soon have one at their house if they don't already. An interesting statistic is that Harvard Business School predicts that half of American colleges will be bankrupt in 10 or 15 years. This is not the way Gen Z students learn. They're more trial and error. Let's jump in, get our hands done. Let's experiment. Let's work on it like that. Let's learn about it in non-traditional ways. If I can Skype with an expert, if I can Skype with even a non-expert, but they're further along than me, that's what I need to do. I don't need a whole semester course to learn a 10-minute skill that I can use to get me through my problem right now. So that even has implications on how do we work with our students to prepare them after they leave us so that they can feel successful. A couple of things we might think about, we might think we're in the smartphone era or smartphone world, only to find out, nope, that was a decade ago. We're now in the post-smartphone world. Short term, and as we've seen it last year and definitely ramping up this year with the holidays coming up, virtual assistants will be widespread. A little bit later down the road, but still soon, we'll start seeing that augmented reality coming in and working with our smartphones. If you have a very high-end smartphone already, you may be able to do some of these advanced features with AR already. Even if you have an entry-level smartphone, you're able to do some very simple things with augmented reality and virtual reality. Soon that will be broadening to TV and other areas where you find screens. And if Elon Musk has his way, we'll have such things as the neural link, which he considers AI for the brain. If technology is great, technology is good, why not integrate it with ourselves? That is the world that our kids will be growing up in, that our kids are growing up in. It's definitely different than what we've thought about or how we've interacted with technology, but this is the technology that they will be considering and making decisions about. Already we have scientists that have connected the brains of 3 folks, enable those people to share thoughts with each other. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel of many years ago, and yet now we're finding that we're able to do some of those very things. So no longer is it futuristic, it's happening right now. Virtual reality, augmented reality. Maybe you've seen toys at Walmart or Target that are low-end, low-tech forms of virtual or augmented reality. Are we using those in the classroom even? Are we preparing our teachers to use those to enhance the curriculum? How are our buying purchases impacting our students and how they learn? Because they will be making decisions not based on the virtual and augmented reality we have today, but based on the virtual and augmented reality they have when they graduate, either from college or enter the workforce. So they will be in charge of what our society looks like as they get older. We need to take into consideration how are we molding them, what are we providing for them so that they can best learn and they can be best educated as a citizen. For a couple of years now, you may have seen Oculus Rift has an app out where with their goggles on, you can actually create in a virtual world. Now, the image there on the left is if you're designing clothes, and so you can use this wand or joystick to paint, so to speak, clothing in the air. But it could be that if you're in a chemistry class and you have goggles on, you're now going to design those molecular structures in space where you can then walk around them, observe them, make note of them, and actually see them without having to look at a textbook, without actually having to go to YouTube. Students will be able to, as you can see there, change colors, change design, change texture, even add animation to it. So instead of the old school project where students are bringing a volcano to school, in a cardboard box, it may be that they're going to be creating a augmented reality volcano that actually erupts, shows lava, and actually allows us to slice into the volcano and look inside of it in the process of that. Very different than when we went to school. Now, this is something that we may have seen already. If you have a newer car, you may have some dashboard features that give you some information. Hopefully, you do not have this much information in your car, though if you're like me, sometimes in my office, I feel like I have information overload. So much information trying to get my attention that I've got to figure out what's most important. Same thing when we're in the working with our teachers in the district. We have a lot of information that we have to consider as we're preparing them to use technology. So we need to be aware of what that information is, what it tells us, and how we can use it for their best. Wearables. Some in our audience may have wearables, rings or something like that they already have on. Bracelets, watches. Sometimes when we think of wearables, we might think of something that looks a little bit clunky, not so much fashion-oriented, but very practical. That will be changing, and that is changing as we speak. Matter of fact, in China, the railway cops already use glasses a little bit more stylish than what Google had put out years ago, though those were ahead of their time, that allow them to do face recognition while they're in the train stations to help deter crime. If you know somebody who has medical issues such as melanoma, their doctor may have presented them with some ideas about wearables that can help them keep track of the UV radiation exposure, such as this device that can just be you peel and stick on a thumbnail, and that it helps you keep track for your own body when you should be getting out of the sun and when you've had too much sun. Levi introduced last December, so you might even find it this Christmas as well, jackets that are wearable. They look very much like traditional jackets, except they have built in them some of the technology, so you can program it with an app, and so have your sleeve recognize if you swipe up or swipe down or you tap on a sleeve, it signals the app, which signals your jacket to perform a certain function. So wearables don't have to be clunky. Wearables can be very utilitarian and now becoming very stylish, very integrated in with what we already think of. Though not technology as we think of it is something that plugs in or needs to be charged, we do have technologies that are now changing the way we build our clothes or changing the way we build cloth so that it's still the same organic fibers, but they have been treated and fused with a substance that makes the fabric virtually impenetrable to stains. Oddly enough, the fabric still breathes. It's still washable. You can still use it like you would fabric, but it doesn't matter if you spill oil, grape juice, wine, blood, water, whatever it happens to be on there, it's not going to stain it. That's great if you're a mom. You've probably been thinking, where was that when my kids were small? Well, now it's coming. You can most likely find it at some high-end stores and definitely online if you look for terms such as hydrophobic clothing. Hydrophobic clothing, that's the term you're going to look for. So while this to us may seem very science fiction-ish, it's what our kids will be knowing, if not soon, when they become adults. It's what they will begin to expect. It's what they will begin to think off of as they even start changing their paradigm. This will be what they start with. You may have a tattoo, but you may not have a biometric tattoo. Biometric tattoos allow you to monitor your body, whether it's glucose levels, whether it is a certain vitamin, or whether it's just for decoration. We now have biometric tattoos that can be applied and used for those that want to go the next step in their artwork or in their medical areas. So that brings us to the Internet of Things that's coming around the corner. You have probably seen a lot of items on the shelf that are connected to the internet. Definitely tons of items that are out there. And so with those, everything is going to be plugging in soon. Everything is going to be connected. Gartner predicts that 95% of electronics next year, 95% of technology next year will be IoT, somehow needing to be plugged in and connected to Wi-Fi. So that makes you want to just scream, stop, I've had enough. Wait, we just need to make some choices here. We are in the cyber physical system world, no longer in the industrial revolution. It's a completely different world for our kids. We have drones that they can go through. They can actually get drone certification, not only a degree in drone, but part of an aviation area. So whether they work for a farmer or Amazon or another, maybe even the military, they will be able to use drones and develop that skill to assist. Driverless transportation, if you're in a large urban area, you've probably had some conversations such as that, as they've done overseas. While we typically may think of cars and trucks, there are also already diesels, even over in California, that are delivering refrigerators via autonomous diesels. Now, there is a person in there right now, but they are not sitting behind the wheel, but the soon may not need the person that's back there. So really, robots are going to be taking over, and it's expected that kids, our kids, Generation Zs, will never drive a car, will never know what that's like, and never even know what it's like driving a stick shift. So we have lots of things that are coming down our pike that are going to be implementing the classroom, whether it's robots in the kitchen, whether it's they're helping us serve, whether it's robots taking some of our skills off of the assembly line. They are going to be coming in and assisting, taking work away from humans. So we have to figure out, how do we best use our skills? How do we learn new skills? They are already using artificial intelligence to do interviews and hiring process, and much more efficient. We already have small nanotechnology that is making a difference in the biomedical areas. So artificial intelligence actually brings a lot of information. Let me go ahead and jump to, because I know I need to pass it over to Sebastian. Let me jump through a couple of slides here, because we already have places that are completely replacing people with robots, stores that no longer are using people, but you go in and you pick up your purchases. One of the last things I wanted to show you here is that up to 1/3 of the American workforce will have to switch by 2030. So we need to be thinking, we don't want our students to be in that role. we don't want them to switch first off. It may be their parents or grandparents that have to switch. So how are we preparing them? Well, one way is to take a look at what job you might be interested in. And that is going to help you find out whether your job is going to be taken over by robots or not. And we can definitely find out, just by looking around us, technology is already making a difference in our classroom. How are we preparing ourselves? How are we preparing our faculty and our teachers to use that best for the students? Implementation is more than just putting out the devices. It takes a lot of beforehand, that preparation and planning. And so the better we do that, the better we prepare our students with technology. Drew, why don't we go ahead and pass it over to Sebastian and let them talk about some of the things that they are doing in Barbers Hill. And we'll hear a little bit from them at this point.
Fantastic. Bruce, thanks so much for the presentation. During this switch off, we're also going to launch our second poll. So if you want to take a look at that and answer those questions while we're kind of making this handoff, want to pass it off to Sebastian, Susie, Kayla, Lisa, and Jennifer, all with the Barbers Hill ISD tech team, to begin kind of taking us through their story of their district and how they went Google and what that was like for them.
Awesome. Thank you. We're very excited and happy to be here. My name is Sebastian Lopez Jr. We are part of the Barbers Hill technology team, and this is our G Suite story. You'll notice at the bottom of this slide, but at the top of the other slide, we have our bit.ly link. Can everybody see that?
Not yet. We're working on getting that shown. Just 1 second.
Okay.
All right, we're good to go. Go right ahead.
All right. All right. We are part of our, not the complete technology team, but a large portion of our technology team here at Barbers Hill Elementary. We are led by our Director of Technology, Ms. Kristen Davis, and our Assistant Director / Network Administrator, Tim LeBlanc. As I mentioned, I am Sebastian Lopez Jr., the Network Manager, and joining me we have Ms.
Stacey Pennington, I'm the Project Manager and Lead Technician.
Kayla Brady, Instructional Technologist for high school.
Jennifer Stevens, Instructional Technologist for middle schools.
Susie Wilbur, Instructional Technologist for elementary schools.
Lisa Kanya, Instructional Technologist for early childhood.
Yes, and if you visit our bit.ly link in the top left-hand corner, this page is also our contact information page. Each name will take you to our Twitter page if you have any questions or comments after the Q&A today. A little general information about Barbers Hill ISD is we're about roughly 30 miles from downtown Houston East. Our school district was established in 1929, and we have 8 campuses total throughout our district. We have roughly, as of earlier this week, 5,787 students. That number changes quite often. It keeps going up. We've had 3 to 5% growth in the past nearly decade, actually. Just from 2 years ago, we jumped 500 students. So when we make plans, we have to factor that in as well. This is a detailed timeline of our G Suite story. We were one of the early adopters in the state to a one-to-one laptop program for our 6th through 12th grades back in 2004. And we've made a lot of changes and changed directions to get to where we are today. Ms. Susie?
Okay. So as Sebastian said, in 2004, we were, I don't believe the first, but one of the first to have a one-to-one laptop program in our high school and middle school. One-to-one is our thinking actually taking home those laptops, not just having them at school. And then, you know, as a technology department, you're always trying to look forward. So we wanted to see what else was going on. So in 2011, our boss then actually tasked the two instructional technologists we had then to find an online calendar where district admin could put in all of their events from different campuses and front office would also know. So I don't want to say accidentally, but we came upon G Suite, which is originally called Google Apps. So we thought, you know what? That looks pretty cool. Let's look at it and see what we can do. So 2011 is the first year we actually used Google Apps. In 2012, we actually surveyed our students because just as in everything else, students need choice. So we wanted to see how many had internet at home, how many had devices at home that they could use. And between parent phones, desktops, laptops, tablets, we had the vast majority of our students who had a device to use at home. So why keep sending laptops home if they're not going to use our device? Their parents were supplying them with devices that were much newer than what the school could provide because our refresh was every 4 or 5 years. It was interesting because between 2012 and 2015, during this time after the survey, when we told our faculty and the community what we were thinking of doing by rolling out the G Suite accounts and deploying Chromebooks, some were afraid that we were actually moving backward. And they're like, well, kids don't have devices to take home now. But once they saw the ease of using G Suite, there wasn't even a question about it. Now, for those students who don't have devices at home, we still had a group of devices that they could check out through the library. So if they didn't have one at home, they could still borrow a device to do homework.
Now, what we learned while working with a one-to-one laptop take-home program was that they ended up being costly. We, of course, had devices that were under warranty for a certain amount of time, but once that warranty ran out, we had to foot the bill for all the repairs. And possibly because of our campuses not having lockers for middle school or high school, some of those repairs were numerous and the same. We had lots and lots of screen repairs, lots of keyboard repairs, cracked cases, and so on and so on. Our campus level technicians were at times almost overwhelmed with the amount of devices they had to repair in a timely fashion to get them back to the students. We also had theft, not so much as theft from student to student or school from school. It's more of, hey, I left my laptop in the car, somebody broke into my car and took my laptop. And all those issues led to costly loss of instructional time. We did not have the availability of spare 3 or 4 laptops per classroom. If we had 1 or 2 students per classroom leave their laptop at home, or it was in for repair, or it was stolen, those students had to do without, or the teacher had to make last-minute accommodations. Now, what we learned while switching the Chromebooks and G Suite, that it was much more than a calendar. We had access to lots of apps. Our Google admin console was really a smooth transition if you worked in Active Directory to a Google console. Is very similar. We tried to do our best at the time, to the best of our knowledge, to match it up and be effective. It's important to try to think out your process of where you want certain devices, how you want to divide up your organizational units, so on and so on. Ms. Lisa?
And we tried to merge our teachers and staff with our Google apps and our Google Suite. And in the analogy we thought of is like when a person's trying to learn a new language, they may just go to another country and totally immerse themselves in that language. And it's not that we didn't offer lots of other things, but we really focused on our Google Suite and teaching our staff and our students those skills.
Going from one-to-one to Chromebook, in the classroom for a one-to-one set in the classroom for the students, it was much more cost efficient for us as far as purchasing and repairs, because you can get basically 3 Chromebooks for the price of what one laptop would cost you.
So where we are now with Chromebooks is that we have taken Chromebooks from pre-K level to grade 12, and the numbers vary depending on classrooms and grade levels. And so instead of doing one-to-one for our middle school and high schools, what we did was we gave them a class set. And even though you may think, well, having a class set versus one-to-one is more expensive, it actually was not when we were using Chromebooks. One of the things that Chromebooks did for us, as Lisa said, that, we had the immersion of Google Apps, and that's what Chromebooks helped make happen. And then with that, it expanded our use of G Suite. So we've moved beyond just the storage capability of Google in the cloud to docs, slides, sheets, and we've expanded to using Google Classroom, which really helps with workflow for teachers and students. So, we have a lot of teachers that will say, okay, now my students have done this on the Chromebook, but how do I grade it? How do I see it? And Google Classroom helps that. We've used a lot of expeditions in AR. We've implemented some learning labs, innovation rooms on our campuses this year, where we have really made that our main focus. And then for teachers, we did have some fear with teachers being a little bit timid about changing, because this was a new mindset for them as well. We showed them how, it's really important to have our students know how to do this, but look at how beneficial it makes you as an educator. Real-time collaboration was a big ticket item for us. So, we no longer have to wait for our kids to finish all their essays before we can go and look at them and give feedback. We can give them feedback right away. And so that was a huge benefit for us. And then to keep up with the Chromebooks in the Google Suite, how can we continue this? So we implemented our professional development policy, where all of our new employees that come to our district, and again, with new growth of students means new growth of staff, we now require every new employee to have a 6-hour basic Google training. And we implement that using Google Classroom as well, which really helps our teachers get the student side as well as learning the Google side. And then we also require our teachers to have a 3-hour technology training update every year.
These are some of the numbers that we have throughout our district. The top left, you see we have 5,787 students, as I mentioned earlier, but we have 7,779 devices, Chromebook devices, currently enrolled in our admin console. Now, Kindergarten Center, which is pre-K and K, through 5th grade, each have 6 devices per classroom. The exception of that, if you notice the asterisk, is that our 4th grade classrooms have half sets of Chromebooks, and our 5th grade classes have full sets of Chromebooks. So we actually now, we just started this recently this school year, have 5th grade through 12th grade classroom sets of Chromebooks for each instructional classroom on our campus.
All right, so I'm going to share a little bit of advice to you when starting to use Chromebooks. So first, I want to let you know that we train teachers before the rollout. So some examples would be maybe the difference between a laptop and a Chromebook. I know that sounds really silly, but there's actually a sign-in difference when it comes to that, and even the way that you would save your documents. So it's really important to know the difference between a Chromebook and a laptop, or a desktop and a Chromebook. Also, the G Suite itself, kind of like a little tour of what is available in the G Suite, the calendar, the Gmail, the Google Drive. In addition to Google Classroom, which is a huge part of our school district when it comes to training. And also it's just ready and available and paid for. The next thing is ongoing training and in-class support, which is a big part of my position because I'm an instructional technologist at the high school, and these other ladies that are here as well. We go into the classroom, we can co-teach with the teacher, we can just have a one-on-one time with them during their off period. They can send us emails if they have any issues, concerns, or they're just asking for new apps, for new innovative things with the Chromebooks. That's something that we would do for them. We would do some of that research so they wouldn't have to spend their time using that to investigate the technology portion of it. They would use their time planning for the class. Let's see. I'm sorry, I want to share this as well. Ongoing training. We do something called Tech Fest that allows teachers that are very successful with our Chromebooks that teach other teachers that sign up for their classes. We also use what we call bookings, and teachers are allowed to book our instructional technologists in advance. And we use something called Click Coaches, which is really cool because they're documents that we create and then we share through a Google Classroom or a Google Drive. The last thing is keep leadership informed to maintain support. You definitely want to make sure that you're contacting your administration. Maybe you're having meetings with your principals. I know my high school principal talks to me a lot about going paperless. He wants to know new ideas. If I'm coming back from a conference, I'm meeting with him or a dean of administration because they're on board. They want to know all of the new ideas, but again, they may not necessarily have that time for it. So that's a lot where the instructional technologist is able to come in.
I will talk just a little bit about some advice for your Google console, your admin part of it. Just structurally, when you're setting up your org units, you need to make sure that you really have a purpose and keep that in mind as to how you want to set those up. For instance, we have our main parent org, which is our district BHISD, and then from there we go to our campuses, and then under that we have sub-orgs for each specific campus, and we have our students in there as well as we have a Chromebook section, and then those are divided by grades so that you can be more specific when you're pushing specific apps or doing different rules for them, and it makes it so much easier. We do keep our student accounts, as I said, separate from where our teachers' accounts are in their org unit because they have different permissions and different things that they need to have. So that makes it a lot easier. And we use our SIS for that information for our students' usernames and passwords so that everything stays the same and it's so much easier for the students. And then because of the amount of Chromebooks that we have bought, and we qualified for an audit from Amplified IT, and it was very, very helpful because prior to the audit, we had our structure for our org unit set up completely different. And so because of the audit, we were able to get some valuable information and set up some new things. And this year we have had a lot less issues coming from Chromebooks being out in classrooms and them running into some issues out there.
Now, one thing we did find through trial and error was the use of Chromebook carts. That's what we started with at the high school. And for us in our district, they did not work out very well. They were constantly needed to be maintained. Wires were pulled out. Chargers needed to be added or taken away. We had the shelvings break, the clips break on the shelving, all sorts of issues. A lot of them had self-chargers that would go out, and then we had to make exceptions. They took up floor space, and they were not really good to look at. Now, something we found through TCEA convention one year was the Powergistics power towers that you see behind the giant green check mark. Those leave a very, very small footprint in the classroom. They're made of metal, steel. They can be customized. They can have locking features added. And the wires are mounted in a way where we don't have to rewire them every summer, which gives us valuable time back to work on other projects. Now, all these things that we mentioned are things that work for us in our district, and we hope can be helpful to you. We want to try to do our best to give our students the valuable life lessons and instructional materials that will help them reach what Dr. Ellis was talking about earlier. Now, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact us. Please submit them here. And that is about it for us.
If you're on Twitter, we usually keep up with Twitter pretty well, and we love, love, love to grow our PLN. So we would love if you want to contact us and we can collaborate together. We'd appreciate that.
Fantastic. Thanks so much to the whole Barbers Hill team. Do want to finish up with just a little bit of housekeeping here, and then looks like we did have 2 questions that came in right at the end. So as the gift that Neverwhere is providing for all of you who stuck all the way through to the very end, we do appreciate that, is 5 free annual licenses of Cloud Ready. So with those licenses, you can turn pretty much any PC or Mac into a Chromebook. If that's something that you want to use in the classroom of a computer class to teach kids about OSs, or if you want to set it up as a kiosk for a check-in at your secretary desk, or however you want to use them, you can message me directly or send a response to one of the emails you got reminding you about the webinar, and we can get you set up with those 5 free licenses. Thanks so much for attending, everyone. If you need to be someplace else, wanted to make sure you knew about that, and we'll launch into these couple of questions that came in here. We had a question come in from Eric Folks. Looks like this is for Barbers Hill. With these separate org units, talking about the OUs in Google Admin Console, are you able to have more granular whitelisting for YouTube approvals rather than all whitelisting being viewable for all students regardless of level?
Yes, you can go specifically down to classroom because we have ours set up by each individual classroom. It is a lot more work at the very beginning, but it makes it so much easier if a specific teacher is wanting to work on something and whitelist something, or you can put that in specifically for that. We have just for instance, tomorrow we're having a leadership meeting, and we grabbed a set of Chromebooks from a classroom, and they made a form that they want the students to vote on. And so they were able to send the link to me. I pasted that in there specifically just for those Chromebook sets that were in that classroom, and they will just go into kiosk mode, and that'll pop up. The kids don't have to log in. It'll vote, and it allows that to, be specific for that. Yeah, because permissions are different.
And we did that for homecoming voting.
Yes, we did that for homecoming. We've done it several times. So you can narrow it down. The more work at the beginning, I believe, that you put in to make it as streamlined as possible, the easier it's going to be in the long run for you to be able to specifically get the things that the teachers are wanting for grade levels, for different campuses, and for different classrooms.
Okay, fantastic. Looks like we also had a question from Deanne. How do we get copies of the slides? The entire slide deck and kind of a copy of the webinar will be sent to all the attendees automatically, so you'll be receiving that. And then she had a question about the name of the checkmark storage versus the storage cart that you had the X through. If you have any brand names there or specifics on what you were using, sounds like there was interest.
Right. The power towers are made by a company called Power Logistics out of Wisconsin, which is a family-owned business, and they are very receptive to your needs. We've had them make custom towers for us, different colors, different sizes, and they come already with a great options you can choose from. There's a locking mechanism. They can make them in a rolling cart style, but we currently have the wall-mounted ones in our classrooms.
We have tabletop ones.
And some tabletop ones, which hold roughly 6 Chromebook devices for our lower campuses.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the brand that we did use.
Some were Bradford.
Some were Bradford. We had a mixture. We tried a bunch of different ones over the course of 2 years to figure out what would work best for us.
As a former educator, classroom teacher, I love the towers just because they're out of the way. And I know people think, well, you can't move the towers when they're mounted, but honestly, I don't know teachers that really move the carts unless they're rotating from room to room. The carts were just cumbersome and just in the way. And then with students taking the charging cable, pulling them out, it was just a headache.
And looks like we had a question as well from Deborah. This was in reference to earlier on when you were talking about the distribution of your Chromebooks. Do all the campuses have a classroom set, or does high school, maybe middle school, take them home? How do you split out the home use, or are they still being used at home, or does everything stay at the classroom?
Yeah.
Okay.
The high school and middle school have classroom sets. They do not go home, but we do have a set of older Chromebooks or laptops. I know at one point in the library, in case someone had to check one out, that they didn't have a device at home. But none of the devices go home now.
The devices don't even leave the classroom.
Yeah.
Each student walks in the door, picks one up off the Chromebook tower, and then goes to their desk.
I think that we've noticed a lot of families buying more Chromebooks because they're so cost efficient, that we have a lot of students that get them for Christmas or birthdays, and they have their own Chromebooks at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the cost has a lot to do with that too.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we will go ahead and wrap up here. If you have any additional questions, you can find all the presenters on Twitter. I know Neverwhere has been tweeting throughout this, and so all their handles are tagged in several of those tweets. If you would like to follow them, I'm sure they would appreciate it. And then if you have any topics you would like to see covered in future webinars, we're hoping to be launching these going into 2019. Or if you know of anyone that you would like to hear from, or if you would like to present, we'd love to hear from you as well. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to Dr. Bruce Ellis, the entire Barbers Hill team, and hope you have a great rest of your week.